The Leader of Opposition.
Mr Deputy President, I rise on behalf of the Opposition to talk to the Budget and Appropriation Bills now before the House. I won't give as full an account as the Leader of the Opposition in the other House, who has given not only a detailed critique of the missed opportunities and shortcomings of this year's state budget, but has set out a positive plan. Labor's positive plan, and has raised a series of initiatives which will inform Labor's deliberations going forward to the next election. Mr Deputy President, patients, students, aspiring homeowners in New South Wales are the biggest losers in the budget handed down this year by the Baird Government. The Premier and the Treasurer have hoarded over $8 billion in surplus taxes over the next 4 years, but have ignored a raft of health, education and housing affordability priorities. The government trumpets the low level of net debt, but what those opposite should note is that when you look at the forward estimates, by 2019-20, the net debt will rise rapidly to the highest level of net debt in 2 decades as they start to spend the proceeds they put into Restart New South Wales. There's talk about the infrastructure spend, which of course in the forward estimates will be at its highest point this year, but over the next 4 financial years it will drop sharply, and at the end of that period it will be at the lowest level in 12 years. The government is trumpeting certain economic measures, but they are not investing in better schools or in hospitals. I'll give you just 2 examples. Nepean Hospital in Sydney's West needs an upgrade estimated at $370 million. In this year's budget, a mere $1 million for planning. Concord Hospital suffers a similar fate, needing an upgrade of about $159 million, with only $700,000 being allocated in this financial year. The importance of hospitals and healthcare is being downgraded in the budget. Upgrades across the state are delayed or being allocated only token amounts of money. More money is allocated in the budget for building new prisons than building new classrooms. This government has failed to restore the funding cuts that started in their first budget of 2011, when $270 million was slashed from school capital works funding. In fact, people with long memories will remember nearly $2 billion was cut out of the school and TAFE education budgets. Over the next 15 years, there will be more than 165,000 more children in our public schools, and yet this budget reveals a nearly $11 billion shortfall in capital funding for the necessary classrooms. At the rate at which this government is setting out its meeting of this challenge, it will take 45 years to build the classrooms that are actually going to be needed in the next 15 years. That is, in any person's language, an utter crisis. The government has made a point of providing $330 million for school maintenance over the next 2 years. They inherited a school backlog of $156 million when they came to office in 2011, but today that backlog stands at $732 million, on the watch of those opposite. And the Auditor General's report reveals that the maintenance backlog increased by $195 million last year alone. So no matter which way you cut these figures, you are slipping backwards. You are slipping backwards, the backlog is getting worse, and you have no plans to close the gap. The attacks on TAFE, the publicly funded vocational education provider, continues. Under the O'Farrell government, it started with the more than $1 billion in attack on TAFE, cutting the budget for TAFE, and the budget documents confirm an underspend in TAFE in the last financial year of $313 million. Since 2012, this government has sacked more than 5,200 teachers and support staff in the TAFE system, and forecast enrolments are down by more than 126,000 a year compared to 2012. There is a record nearly $9 billion in transfer duties delivered in the budget of 2015-16 on the back of Sydney's continuing property boom. and that trend is forecast in the budget before us to continue with stamp duty receipts over $37 billion over the next 4 years. But let's compare the mishandling of these important financial resources by this government. There is a blowout in the West Connect set of projects of $6.8 billion, which is nearly the total amount of funding allocated to rural and regional New South Wales under the electricity privatisation procedures. Just squandered. Just squandered.
Are you taking a point of order?
Interrupting. This is an opportunity for the Leader of the Opposition to have a say in relation to...
But he's wasting the time.
Order. It's a well-known ruling that the members should be heard in silence.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So $6.8 billion blowout in West Connects, a $1.5 billion blowout in the Metro South project. The inner city fleet renewal is blowing out by more than $1 billion, squandering the resources coming from the Sydney property boom. And despite these rivers of stamp duty gold, it has never been more difficult or unaffordable to get into the Sydney housing market. And there is no measure in the budget to even attempt to square the shoulders of this government to meeting that challenge. While celebrating the surplus, no new measures in the budget to drive housing affordability or assistance measures for key workers like our police, our nurses and teachers who are finding it near impossible to buy a home. Of course, the only practical suggestion from this government is for teachers to get out of Sydney. On top of that is the fact that the first home owners grant has been cut by $5,000 since the beginning of 2016. Now, despite this government's commitment or claim in this budget papers to support renewable energy projects across New South Wales, there is no line item of funding in the budget papers apart from the ongoing solar bonus scheme and energy efficiency measures. No wonder New South Wales is now lagging last in its performance in Australia in this area. Last year, in the budget papers, this government claimed to be committed to driving down electricity prices. It's very instructive, Mr Deputy President, that no such claim is made in this year's budget papers. And there's small wonder, because they have spent a small fortune in legal fees trying to overturn the Australian Energy Regulator's determination, which would see significant cuts for business and individual homeowners' electricity fees, to drive up the price of electricity prices, to fatten the state-owned electricity assets for sale. Totally against the public interest. But all of that pales almost into insignificance to the key challenge, which remains wholly unacknowledged and unaddressed at the heart of this budget, and that is state finances. By 2020, revenue will drop to the lowest level in 15 years, and this is compounded by the billions of dollars of federal funding cuts to schools and hospitals arising from the 2014 federal budget. These cuts will soon be felt in the New South Wales state budget, but those opposite have no plans to meet that challenge. Compounding this further is the state's falling share of GST, which counts for around 25% of total revenue. To put that in perspective, stamp duty is around 9%. In 2014, by 2019-20, the share of GST allocated to our state will fall to a historic low of 26%, more than 5 percentage points below the 2014-15 share of 31%. If New South Wales had managed to persuade their federal colleagues to keep New South Wales' share of GST at the 2014-15 levels, more than $10 billion of extra GST revenue would flow through into the New South Wales Treasury. And these are the New South Wales Treasury's own figures. They've gone easy on their federal colleagues, and New South Wales is being ripped off to the tune of $10 billion in GST revenue over that period of time. And compounding this will be the fact that, as I've indicated, the share of state revenue will drop to its lowest level in 15 years by 2020. And there is no plan in this budget or in the Treasurer's speech to even acknowledge, much less address, this emerging and widening hole at the centre of state finances. But at the same time, the state government feels free to give away a range of existing long-term taxes, historically worth between $400 to $500 million per year. And they crow about it, lifting taxes on business. And that's their choice. But at the same time, as they have a widening blowout and deterioration of state finances revealed, not only by the federal funding cuts, not only by the collapse of GST, but by the fact that the Treasury's forecast that state revenue will decrease to the lowest level in 15 years over the next 4 years. It's a time bomb at the heart of state finances, a point they refuse to acknowledge and which will come home to bite us all. Now, I will give a longer analysis of the shortcomings and missed opportunities of this budget in the budget estimates take note debate. I would remind those of us that I still have 29 minutes to go. We can stand here for a fair bit of the afternoon if you want to keep interjecting. But on that note, I will end my contribution, and I look forward to returning to the discussion of the state budget and the budget estimates take note debate in August.
Thank